What's up, everybody? I'm Kwame Awua, one of your hosts with Adam Jones, and this is episode 3 of Top Bin Talks, presented by FTF Canada. Today, we have a special guest with us as our third episode. One of my longtime friends, known him for over a decade, current midfielder for Atletico Ottawa in the Canadian Premier League. Super baller, talented from the Toronto area. We grew up playing against each other. One of the best players I played against growing up. Canadian midfielder, U23 midfielder. I could go on and on. Like, my boy, Chris Mannella. Let's go. What's up,
going on, Kwame? Wow, that's the best intro I've ever had. I don't even know. I didn't even know half that stuff about me, but I'll take it.
Dog, bro. Come on, man. Man's keep tabs on the Mandem, bro.
I'll take it. I love that.
Yeah, dog. Bro, so let's run it back. So we've known each other since provincial days, Team Ontario, when you and Manny Garcia looked like twins in the midfield. With your long hair. Yeah, that's crazy. That's a throwback, right?
Yeah.
So take me back to like your youth club days. Like, what were your first teams like, and what was your favorite soccer experience growing up?
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy. I'm hearing even that name when you said that. That's wild. Everybody literally thought we were twins. That's fucking crazy. That's amazing. But no, I mean, the youth club system I started off with Spartacus. Mostly I can remember. There was actually I had a couple Russian coaches who nailed technique and technical work on us pretty hard. He was yelling at us, swearing at us from like weird age of like 7. So that kind of made me have a thicker skin growing into what eventually would be the professional game without even knowing it. Started off there, had a few years there, and then moved to Islington Rangers out west. Played there with a few years where I ended up playing with, even future teammates of mine, Kevin Alaman. Now we're back together. It's pretty funny. And then I met some like really good friends of mine, I've kept in life through there. And then moved into the provincial program where, under 14 started. And then that's when I kind of realized that it was going to be, a little bit more serious. This coaches were on us, on our asses, like the whole time we were there. The fitness on the Tuesdays and Thursdays, running up on top of the OSA. It was just absolute madness from that moment on. And then kind of propelled into the TFC Academy from there. And then for my earliest memories, honestly, it's funny you say that, but it's like those OSA days that were so cold, in the deep, dark months of like December and November, where we're shoveling snow off the field before we have to practice. Like Ian Skitch and Jim Canavan are like, boys, on the fucking field, go shovel, and we're going. You know what I mean? And like just remembering those feelings was awful. So I think that's like the first thing that comes to my head, but it was like made you like realize, okay, you got to work in this country for soccer, and they're not going to do anything for you. So you better, bust your ass. If you want to play, you got to go shovel the field.
That's facts. That is absolutely facts. Yeah. I mean, I remember it as well, playing under Ian Skitch and Jim Canavan and then Patrick Tovo. You're literally just shoveling the field for the older guys, because you're always the younger guys. Yeah, you literally like, hey, you guys go run on the field, melt all the snow, all the ice, and when the older guys pull up, you're like, here you go. Yeah, like, the field's prepped for them, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. So coming into the professional game, you sign a contract with Toronto FC. Tell me, how did it feel when you first signed that homegrown contract with Toronto FC? Like, you were one of many. Obviously, you had Manuel Aparicio, who you're playing against this weekend, by the way. And then you had Jordan Hamilton. There's a lot of guys that are in the CPL now that have signed with Toronto FC homegrown contracts. Like, tell me about that experience, how you felt when you first put pen to paper.
Yeah, I mean, it's a special moment for anyone, and I'm sure as you know as well, where you finally become a professional soccer player, you know what I mean? And that moment where you sign that paper, it's something you worked towards and wanted, at least my whole life. And especially being, Toronto FC being like my home club, and understanding how much that meant to me even then. I was in the stands from day one where Danny Dick was scoring the first goal of Bima. I'm tossing seat cushions onto the field with my dad as a seat holder. So I was there, and then I got the opportunity to go through the academy, and then eventually sign pro was something so special for me. When I still have a few of those seat cushions in my garage, so it's like a reminder for me, which is pretty cool. And then honestly, being around like eventual kind of lifelong friends in Manu, even in Jahams, and a bunch of guys around me, Bono, seeing now. So it's pretty cool to have those experiences with the guys, that one I've grew up with, and two met over the course of my years playing pro, and especially being at TFC was something so special. And I just remember, actually, I remember the day I got the call. I was sitting at lunch with, one of our kind of mutual friends, Wags. We were sitting there, and
Wag and neck.
and I remember, so shout out to him. He's an absolute baller, by the way. And we're sitting there, and I remember getting the call, Greg being like, "Hey, you think you can come up to the training ground and we're gonna sign you?" And I looked at Wags and I said, "I got lunch, buddy." And then he's like, "No, I got lunch." And then he like comes in, he buys it, and then he gives me a hug. Off we go. So I'll never forget that day, and he'll always play a huge part in my memory, especially that special moment for me.
Your dad was probably ecstatic. Like you said, you guys are season ticket holders, and he was probably over the moon.
Yeah, my family is super invested. An Italian family where my mom wants to still buy my groceries and do my laundry. She was completely over the moon. My dad is obviously super happy. Wore every single jersey of mine, even though he's a 5'5" Italian man who's about 200 pounds and not fit into a medium MLS Adidas jersey. So he still tried to get them on somehow, and then he tried to finesse his way into being like, "Give me XLs, give me everything." Yeah, I'm not wearing XL jerseys, so you can wear them in December. But yeah, my family was pretty happy about that.
Cool. That's what's up. I remember training for Toronto with Toronto FC Academy just a little bit. Jim Brennan was our coach, him and Caps. So I know the work that those guys put in, the work that everyone else on the Toronto FC senior and junior team put in, and it was a talented group.
Yeah.
I mean, moving on to the next question, then I'll let Adam jump in. None of our journeys have been perfect. Mine, yours, a lot of the guys that went through the Canadian system, the Toronto FC Academy system. So you went from TFC, and then you went to where, Spain, was it?
Just for a kind of a brief stint, yeah.
Brief stint, yeah. But so
then,
talk about your journey through Europe, and then what brought you essentially back to Atletico Ottawa in the Canadian Premier League.
Yeah, so I mean, listen.
Oh, you play for Ottawa Fury as well.
Yeah, exactly. So that was kind of my next step. But from the MLS system, you always think that it's going to be sort of a quite linear path, and being a young boy, you don't really understand the ins and outs of football and kind of the inner workings of how things may go, or how things work, blah blah blah. So to say that one has a perfect path or not, I guess you could say academy system, first team, and then first team playing regular would be kind of the perfect path. Doesn't happen as often as you would hope. So I think any journey would be the proper journey in my eyes, as long as you're enjoying what you do and end up in a place where you're happy. I think is an important kind of realization for any youth footballer aspiring to be pro and eventually turning pro. So my time at Toronto FC obviously came to an end. Was in a place where I wasn't really sure what was going to happen next. The opportunities in Canada for a Canadian footballer are quite slim, as we all know, and this was obviously before the CPL time, so you didn't really know. Ended up in Spain for just a little quick stint. Realized that it's not what people think. It's not the glamorous La Liga. It's not the glamorous Premier League football. If you go play in England, it's not that, because everybody and their mother wants to play soccer in those countries, and the money is different. It's not, maybe not get paid on time or whatever it may be. It's just different. So then I ended up coming back after a really, really quick kind of trip over there, and had the opportunity to work with the Ottawa Fury, and Julian de Guzman came and invited me into preseason with them. And that's kind of where I fell in love with this city, and had the opportunity to play under Nikola Popovic, who was was a quite intense coach. People may have liked him or not hated him in a sense, but one way or another, I had the opportunity to play under him. We had a pretty good side, fell in love with this city, and then in turn was kind of the main reason why I ended up back here, because I met so many great people, lifelong friends again, ended up loving the city. And then obviously transitioning into Atletico Ottawa was almost a no-brainer for me. So it was quite a journey that I had from the moment signing from TFC into where I am now. But honestly, I wouldn't trade it for the world.
That's what's up, 100%.
Yeah,
Adam.
Chris, and super interesting. Like, you talk about that group that you guys went through at TFC with Manny and J Hams and everyone, and you guys kind of all had almost a similar journey. You know what I mean? Like, you guys kind of went through the academy system, which again, I'd love to hear what that youth group was kind of like, because obviously with myself on the West Coast, like, it was kind of that same time where we had, Sam, Bustos, Keon's, like, Brody Heidem at the time we went to Duke. Like, it was a good group out here as well, who, in the MLS, I guess in the USSDA, which it was back then, they did quite well. But to see you guys kind of all go up to the MLS side, then Jordan stuck around the most. You and Manny kind of had similar thing where you both kind of, I think Manny went overseas for a little bit too.
Yeah, he spent a lot of time out there. Yeah.
Yeah, like, did you guys at any point, and then obviously you going back to USL Championship, Jordan going back to USL Championship before coming back to the CPL, did you guys like keep in contact and kind of try and help each other out and kind of and do that? Like, is it at any point did you guys kind of pick up the phone and go like, hey, someone out, like, you guys kind of all had a similar experience where you kind of draw on each other and for advice and anything like that?
I mean, it's tough to really almost keep connections throughout football when you guys are doing so many different things, schedules are different, so it's never easy to just stay on top of those things. So I'm not going to lie as of, hey, I was talking to Manu every day, or I was talking to JMs being like whatever. So it's not like we had those conversations and actually guided each other. If Jordan or Manu ever had questions or whatever and picked up the phone and called me, absolutely. I remember J Hams even talking to me about the CPL even as of most recently, and kind of just getting my thoughts a little bit, and it was kind of quick chats here and there asking me how things were. So we were always open to one another. I think us sharing the experiences when we were so young and growing up together and all obviously like living similar paths will always kind of be that bond, and that kind of experience, because not many people understand what we went through. Not many people did what we did, and there's always that sense of, okay, Manu, Jordan, Kwame, they know what I've gone through. They know the training schedule. They know, the ups and downs of the meetings with the managers, the GMs, this and that. Like, they've seen all this, they've gone through that. So there's always that kind of tight knit community where you can share these experiences and kind of bounce off of each other with what you might be looking for, whether it be pathways or if one thing is good or not. So we've kind of done that sense where if they've ever had any questions, I've had no hesitation to answer them, and vice versa. So it's always kind of a tight knit group with anyone.
Yeah, I think that the Ontario soccer community in general, like, we all know of each other. We might not be the best of friends, but like, we can always reach out to each other because we've either played against each other, grew up playing against like someone's brother or something. There's always a connection somehow. And I don't know how it is on the West Coast. I mean, Adam, you can talk about the West Coast. I don't know how tight knit everyone is, but I don't know how many teams you guys have on the West Coast. But in Ontario, it's like a melting pot. You have so many teams, provincial program, TFC Academy. There's so many Sigma. There's so much things going on, but everyone still lived in the GTA. So like, we'd all play on different teams, but then after soccer, we see each other on road, just like, you know what I mean? So we just casually just hang out with each other. So I think that made the bond a lot better. You joined Ottawa. Oh wait, actually no, continue, Adam. My bad.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it was a bit different out here, just because I think your guys' population density was so much. Yeah. So much. You guys were all in one area, whereas in BC we're a little bit more spread out in the sense that there's certain urban areas, but GTA is there's so many people in that area, whereas we're just that little bit more spread out. So it's not like you're running into people all the time. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I even talking to some of the FTF guys where they talk about school soccer, where you guys are also, you're playing against each other with club, but then you're playing with each other there. Like, that didn't happen. Like, my high school team was my club's elite players. Like, I was just playing with older players from my club. And so we'd win and we'd do really well, but we were still all within the same club. It wasn't like we were playing with guys from different clubs. So that's probably a big
we were
difference.
quite close. Yeah, we were all kind of like Kwame. We were all quite close in Ontario. It's weird. Like, I mean, even if you look at TFC2, it was kind of the perfect example or even TFC Academy, like you guys were playing in the USDA, we were playing in like League One Ontario, you know?
Yeah.
Everyone was kind of, so for like TFC, before it was a TFC2, we were playing against Sigma in League One Ontario. But if you hear the lineups, like if you look at the TFC lineup, it was like, okay, myself, Mark Anthony K, Mo Babuli, you know, like guys like Beno, exactly, Manu Aparicio, like all these guys. And then you look at the Kyle Aaron, Kwame, like Alex Hallis, like all these guys who are like going to D1 and like literally playing pro. Like Kyle ends up in obviously what he's doing. Kwame's doing, like the games were unmatched. And this is a semi-pro league. You know what I mean? Like this is not even anything. And
I almost prefer that. I prefer it because at the same time, like one of the things that I can't stand right now that a lot of TFC are kind of like this. They're not quite the same there as they are out here, especially with the Whitecaps and stuff, but it's almost like, well, we don't want to be wrong, so we're not going to play our own age group. We're going to play older players. So if we lose, there's almost a built-in excuse where it's like, no, like you're not expected to bat 1,000. You can't. It's impossible. You have no idea what a kid's mentality is going to be 2 days from now. Something might happen to him that might shatter him. It's a kid. His brain's not fully developed. Like, I mean, and you guys have talked about how mentally strong you guys have to be to like go through both of your journeys to end up where you are now. Like, you have no idea what kids are going to be like in that system. So the idea where you can play against those guys, like you talk about that TFC team where you guys are playing that Sigma team, you're like, well, it's hard to say TFC got something wrong at that time. Whereas when you look back, you're like, how'd they miss these guys? But the fact that you guys got to play against each other rose the level so high that they're great games to go out and watch and everyone's enjoying it.
Yeah. It's so funny because like we used to play those games and then go hang out with each other, like whoever got bragging rights. So it was literally like a bragging right. It's like we used to take that shit to heart. Like it was like, nah, we can't lose it because I'm gonna see this guy downtown like tomorrow and they're gonna be talking mad smack. Like we still hang out with each other, but it's like, nah, F you. At that time, it's like, so it brought the competitiveness out of us. So, and a lot of us went to school together. Some of us went to, you know what I mean? So that obviously, like you said, the GTA it's a lot easier for us to bump into each other.
100%.
But moving on to Ottawa, you go to Ottawa, Fury, and then the CPL starts. Obviously, COVID hits. Ottawa, your first ever time in the CPL. Y'all have like 16, 17 players. You have to drag guys. Oh, come play. You guys don't do too bad. Like, you guys did decently well for how many players you had and how many games that we had in quick succession. Tell us about your experience the first year and then compare your years. So you've been there for 3 years. So every year it seemed like Ottawa was moving in the right direction.
Yeah. So one thing, and people kind of overlooked this because it was such a crazy year. I was actually at York for a year. Remember that?
I was going to say, you were at York.
Yeah. Oh, he was at York.
But it's crazy. It's honestly crazy because like it was a COVID year and I had just signed. So my first, and 2 days before the tournament, I take a free kick in training and I pull my groin. So I missed the first 4 games. And 4 games is half the season or more than half the season. The bubble were 7 games. So honestly, like people even forget I was there for, honestly, this happened multiple times where people like forgot he was even home because my whole thing was, okay, Ottawa was great to me. CPL came back, started up. I missed the first season because I was in Ottawa and then seeing York, I was like, listen, back home, family, friends, the city I love, my kind of forte. If anybody knows me, I'm like a homebody. I love my whatever. So I was like, listen, no brainer, come back home. COVID hits, done and dusted. I'm sitting in a bubble in PEI for 5 weeks, whatever. So
miserable.
Yeah, terrible. And then kind of what happened was Ottawa came and was like, listen, whatever, be interested in, having you come. And I was like, sure, like, listen, I love the city, the blah. One thing led to another and I'm back. But seeing how they did in the first season under the gun, putting 16, 17 guys, like you said, under pressure, 2 weeks notice kind of thing. And then, they did so well. But from my experience in the next season, we had somewhat of people would say like almost an advantage. Like we went to Spain, right? And we were there
I was
for,
gonna say preseason in Madrid must be really
yeah, no,
difficult.
it's,
Oh my God, what a
listen,
selling point that is.
it's incredible. It's I'm not gonna lie, it's quite awesome because like they treat you so well. You know, you're going to see like the Atletico Madrid games. It's like almost it's kind of crazy for this league at least to kind of have those experiences. So Atletico Ottawa does that like on point. But with that being said, the first year was still like question marks everywhere. Or so yeah, my first year was still question marks everywhere. We were basically stuck in Spain for 2 months. That first month went by, we had everything kind of coordinated, scheduled. But then as time rolled on, where we didn't know where we were going, whether it be a bubble, not a bubble, blah blah blah, we were stuck there. You know, we didn't want to come back and have to sit through quarantine and not train after training for a whole month together. So our coaches and our GM just said, listen, let's just stay here until we know. Ended up actually being an extra full month. So it was quite a long trip to be together with people, seeing them every day, every meal. You guys know how that is on the road. It's not easy. So yeah, it was an advantage, but then we were also living in a bubble for 60 plus days, going straight to a Winnipeg bubble. That's another 20 to 30 days. It was difficult. It was difficult. A lot of guys' mental health, guys, a lot of, myself included, not easy. So it's just like, it was one of those things where it wasn't an advantage. Was it a disadvantage? Maybe the season speaks for itself. And kind of the results that went along the way over the course of, the next 5 to 6 months. And then transitioning into this year where everything is obviously normal. There's no COVID restrictions. You have a kind of a real plan. Carlos bringing us in day one saying, boom, boom, boom. This is our plan. This is what we're going to be about. This is our identity, whatever. These are our goals. And it's shown, it's shown a lot more organization, a lot more whatever. And the results have come on the field one way or another, whether it be, we've heard people call it boring football one way or another or not, it's work. So
it's called winning.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what's been going on here. And we're very structured. So the evolution from my first season into now was quite impressive. And I think everything is shown on the field because of that. So it's pretty cool.
Has the organizational side of it, has that been vastly different from the Fury days? Just because obviously it is different owners and different GM and everything. Yeah. But it's also a way different league where you guys aren't having to travel down south.
100%. I think the organization of the Fury was quite good as well. We had people like, there's a shout out Carrie McKay was in the back office, and she was doing everything she could with Julian de Guzman, and they had a lot going on as well, and mixed with that. But it's hard to compete with the entity of Atletico Madrid. You know what I mean? Like the backing, the financial backing of Atletico Madrid and all their success and what they, they stand for in world football. It's never easy to compete with them, no matter how big or small the people of the Ottawa Fury are and what job they do. Atletico Madrid is a huge entity. So the organization, I would say, is a little bit different in the sense that there's a lot more, financial backing, whether it be bringing us to Madrid, doing these perks that we have because of them. It's a little bit more different. And especially from year 1 to year 2, they've made adjustments in the fact that like hiring certain people in certain positions to make our lives easy from off the field, on the field, very smooth. Transition is quite easy, whether it be meals, flights, travel days, whatever, everything is smooth. Everything is taken care of as almost it should be, and really just take the focus off everything else but playing. So it's pretty interesting to see, and it's cool to be a part of, that's for sure.
Yeah, because it just seems like your guys' progression every year has kind of been how it's been scaled almost, Yeah. And I feel like the Fury might have been similar to more CPL clubs where you have people in the back room, like the backroom staff, who are doing multiple things just because you kind of have to. Whereas I feel like because of your guys' scale, it's like, no, this person has this role. This is their role. They can do that to the best of their ability, and someone else is hired to do something else.
100%. And I think the only difference is obviously we're barred by a salary cap in this league. The Ottawa Fury wasn't. So you had players on obviously varying salaries in the USL Championship. But yeah, absolutely. They can designate certain roles to certain people and have that transition nice and easy. So definitely.
All right. So obviously, Chris, being a central midfielder, who are some of the players that you kind of looked up to when you were younger, kind of watched and kind of tried to idolize on the pitch?
Yeah. I mean, I started as an attacking midfielder in my head, and coming to the days of provincial team, I thought I was a number 10. I've come to find out that's not my role. That's not my natural position. So I obviously watch like Francesco Totti playing out wide, especially up top. You know, he was my idol for a long time. But then I also grew into loving Pirlo. Andrea Pirlo was a huge kind of role model of mine, and I know Kwame had the opportunity to play with him, which would have been pretty fucking cool. So he was definitely a big one for me, watching him transition from team to team and still being able to kind of produce the same levels of play, and obviously in the MLS is a completely different beast, and still, you know, held his own, being not the most physical guy and not the most kind of, that's not really his forte, but he was probably the biggest for me. Andrea Pirlo was my number one for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, going into that, obviously with the Italian contingent that are now signing for TFC, and even before that, like a lot of them have started coming over to MLS. Like, what do you find like the mood's like kind of around Toronto when you go back and you go back home and stuff? Like, is it that much bigger now because of the heavy Italian community?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I played with Javinko, and I was fortunate enough to see him walk into the locker room and be like, Jesus Christ, you know, I see this guy. I play with this guy on FIFA Ultimate Team all the time. I'm trying to get him because he's so fast in FIFA, and all of a sudden he's my teammate. So he was kind of the turning point, I'd say, especially for the Italian community. Obviously with Michael Bradley and Jermaine Defoe coming over, and like the bloody big deal thing, that was kind of the new evolution, the new era of TFC. And then, you know, coming into Javinko was when, you know, it was time for the team to step up and actually be title contenders. And then with that came obviously the large Italian population, a large Italian community coming behind the team. It's simply because, you know, he was such a global superstar, or at least an Italian superstar, and now all of a sudden he's in Toronto, and, you know, the people of Woodbridge, obviously, but then the Little Italy, you got the people in St. Clair, they're all kind of coming together, coming down to the Lakeshore and watching games because of, you know, this little Italian who's clearly the best player in the league, doing his special things on the weekend. So going back now, seeing it obviously which is an unbelievable signing, and obviously Insigne and Bernadeschi, both of them, two world-class players coming in at, you know, times where they can still make impact. I think they've propelled just kind of the whole camaraderie of I can't even say that word, the whole kind of community of the Italian community coming together and focusing on what is professional soccer in our city. So it's cool to see, because, you know, even my grandfather understands, you know, what TFC is now when Javinko came, as opposed to him like not even knowing what it was before I signed, and not even realizing there was a soccer team in his city. He was just watching kind of Juventus and Inter on Rise. So it's come a long way.
No, for sure. And I mean, I think the biggest question is, does winning the Euros, does that compensate for the fact that an entire generation of Italian national team players will never play at a World Cup?
Well, that's a tough one. I was honestly hard done by them obviously not making it. I was quite a shock. I'm not gonna lie. Winning the Euros is quite impressive. Don't get me wrong. It's obviously the second biggest trophy you can win as an Italian national team. But yeah, obviously I don't know. It's a good question. I think if you ask any of the players, it doesn't help winning the Euros, because, you know, the World Cup is obviously the most coveted thing for any player in the world wanting to win. And then obviously it's a disappointment for everyone surrounding the national team. I know businesses in Italy rely almost on the soccer to be showed on TV, and for them to, you know, have more food and drinks served at those places. So I think it's a huge loss for that in particular. But yeah, it's an interesting one. It's going to be weird for me watching the World Cup, not knowing that Italy's not in it. However, you know, I have my real home nation, because as much as I'm Italian background, I am Canadian through and through. So having them in it is like, you know, better than anything else, to be honest.
Oh, for sure. I mean, we're incredibly lucky that, you know, we're going to get to go through this, and it's going to be, and it's a hell of an interesting World Cup too. And just like quickly from your perspective, like just things you've read and seen, like with everything going on kind of behind the scenes right now with the potential CBA and men's and the women's teams, like, what do you make of it? Do you think one side's being a little bit more virtuous? Do you think someone's not being transparent enough? Like what's your kind of initial feeling on it?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not gonna lie and kind of sit here and pretend like I'm the know all end all to this topic, and by all means do I not know the full story. I obviously I read a little bit of what the players had to say in their statement. I think it was a couple months ago. And listen, they've done things that nobody almost expected them to do. Not only did they qualify for the World Cup, but they come first in the group, and they qualify in that manner. They've brought so much attention. People that I know personally, outside of soccer, have now all of a sudden become soccer fans, and now they know, hey, Canada's going to World Cup, Canada's going to World Cup, blah blah blah. So the players who have done that on the field, who have been a part of that group for X amount of years, are definitely deserve whatever they honestly want. In my opinion, it's to an extent. Obviously, you have to be understanding of what Canada Soccer and Canada Soccer business and what they can obviously do for the players, men's and women's, but particularly on the men's side right now. They've done so much. They've done so much for everything. They've done so much for the sport that it's almost like, hey, listen, sit down, have a proper meeting with the boys, and whatever they at least willing to have, hear them out, and let's meet in the middle ground where they can be happy going into a tournament that means so much to our country. Like it brings everyone together. Soccer brings everyone together, and they've done it, and they're going to do it in November. So yeah, that's kind of my take on it. And then the women's side, it's obviously a whole different aspect where they've done it for X amount of years. They've done it for so long, being literally the top, 3-4 of the countries in the world, that they've garnered so much attention. You see them going to, in Vancouver, filling out the stadium, selling out the stadium. They've done so much that they deserve, what they want as well. So it's a tough situation, obviously, to handle for CSP and Canada Soccer. But listen to the players. They've honestly done whatever they've needed to on the pitch. Listen to them and give them essentially what they want. So that's my take.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. I just think, being a realist, I think going into it, I think all of the parties need to come together here and realize that none of them are going to get exactly what they want. Yeah. So every single side is going to have to compensate and compromise for something else if they all want to get something that's enough. Just because, even going forward, like the Canadian women U15s just went through CONCACAF qualifying. They met 3 days before in the location because they didn't have a camp.
Yeah, that's
like
crazy.
I look at that and I go, okay, if say CSA goes, no, we want X amount more, that's where the money gets funneled, is there. Like this whole idea, I think for me, I'd rather see more of the funding, especially from just say this past World Cup. And then if you look at the funding going forward, it needs to fund those types of things where these groups of players can get together a lot earlier and actually succeed. Because we look at how the U20 girls did. They had all this expectation. We're a top 10 country in the world. U17 and U20 World Cups, we don't get out of the group.
Yeah.
And part of that comes down to preparation. So if we don't have money as a federation and as an association to be able to do a proper camp, that's a major issue. And it sucks that these players who've got to the highest level might be the ones who have to suffer for it. Like that blows.
Yeah, 100%. And I didn't know the situation with U15s and them kind of joining together 3 days before. Yeah, that's criminal. That can't happen, because we look at our women's and our men's program. We have men's and women's players playing at the highest level. We have women's side. You got them playing Champions League finals. Manchester City, Lille, all over the Premier League, all over top division in France, top division in Spain. Like you have these players at the top level. On the men's side, you have players playing at the top level, becoming world famous. We have a star in Canada, Alphonso Davies, who is literally one of the highest ranked transfer market fees in the entire world, in world football.
It's one of the most popular athletes in the world. Not even just football, athlete. Like it's insane.
We have these stars that have garnered attention from literally across the globe, both on the men's and women's side. If we want this to continue, and we want the next Alphonso Davies, or we want the next Christine St. Clair, Janine Becky, whatever it might be, it's got to start at the grassroots, and it has to be funded through the grassroots, and they have to fund those kind of grassroots programs in order for them to propel them. So hearing about this U15 camp, it's obviously it's not good. I don't like hearing that kind of stuff, and I don't like knowing that that's still kind of going on. And if that's the case, then yeah, something has to change. If we want to be a top contender from now on in every World Cup, in every Gold Cup, both on the men's and women's side, then we have to understand that it starts with the girls and the guys who are 12, 11, 10 years old now, because in 10 years, they're going to be the ones that are shouldering the weight of penalty kicks in a octagon or whatever it is, and they have to, the hacks to qualify for a World Cup. They have to understand these kind of things, and if everybody's on the same mindset about that stuff, then I think we'll be fine. But yeah, that's a definitely important step.
Massively, because I remember talking to someone, Kevin Harms, who was at, I want to say it was one of the U20 World Cups back in like 2000 or 2004, where they qualified. They went through their group. Ian Hume scored. They played against Spain. They played against Iniesta. And I talked to him about he goes, we were away for a month. We went and did 2 weeks in Costa Rica to get used to the climate. And then we flew to Europe because the tournament was in Europe 2 weeks prior. And you're like, and again, it was off the back of winning the Gold Cup and playing in the Confederations Cup. It was right off the back of that. So there's all this funding for it, right?
That's
where
great.
it's like, man, if we just think about if we could have continued that for both the men's and the women's programs, like what position might we be in right now? Like, would it be like, this is almost normal? But anyway, we'll move on because I know you got to go soon. Buddy, up 2-0 going into the second leg against Pacific. What's the feeling like right now in the dressing room?
Obviously it's good. I mean, we understand that, it's a good position to be in. However, it's halftime. It's a two-legged race, and anything could happen. Obviously, we went there and scored 2 goals. They can come here and easily do the same. So we have to be prepared for another 90-minute battle. And they have everything to play for, and as do we. But they understand the position they're in, so we know that they're going to be coming out, guns blazing, throwing everything at the wall to try to get that first goal, and then eventually, obviously, push for the second. So it's going to be a tough one. It's never easy, knowing that you're obviously in a good position, because sometimes that can lead you in the wrong direction. So it'll be an interesting one for sure. I know that we have a lot of fans coming out and supporting us. The ticket sales are quite good, which is obviously super nice to see and hear, because it's not warm out here in Ottawa, and it's going to be, I'm sure it's going to be cold. I don't know the weather, but if I had to guess, this Ottawa, it'd be pretty chilly. So I'm excited to see how things turn out, but around us, we're confident, and we know that it's going to be 90 minutes to put a championship on the line after. So
yeah, and then obviously having played for the Fury, falling in love with the city, now coming back with Atletico, like what would it mean to you to not just go through this second leg, but go through the final and win?
Yeah, it'd be huge for me. It would be huge for me, and as an individual. God knows what kind of my future holds, with especially being here in the city. So it would be nice to lift the trophy with my friends, who I've known obviously for so long, and especially Carl, Max, even Drew, Nate, and Ben, and all my kind of my close friends on the team. It would be cool to share a moment with like that with them, in front of what I would say is the best fans in the league and the best stadium in the league. And so it would be a special moment for me, that's for sure.
And what do you think it would mean to the city? Just obviously, because you really just got the Red Blacks and the Senators.
Yeah, it would be huge. Honestly, it would be huge. I mean, the Senators haven't been great over the last few years, so that would be obviously something big for us to be champions in this city. The Red Blacks, are up and down, so I think it would be huge for everyone in the city, regardless if you support soccer or not, to be host of a champion. Then it would be something special that I think everybody can kind of walk around with their chest held high, at least for the end of this year and moving on to the next season. So I think it'd be nice.
Yeah, at least you guys don't have that stupid fucking goal horn the Senators have. Oh my God, I hate that so much. So much. I'm a Leafs fan, so I gotta hear that stupid thing all the time.
So am I. I'm just not well versed in hockey, so I'll take it.
All right, buddy. Hey, Chris, thank you so much for hopping on and joining us. All the best this weekend. It's gonna be a good game. That's the best part about the CPL right now is how much better the league's getting incrementally every single year. And when you look at the final 4 teams, with yourselves, obviously Pacific, Forge, and Cavalry, it's not a bad game to watch. And even the teams that just missed out, you're like, they would have added value to these semifinals. Right, so best of luck. Definitely be watching, and tell all the boys we say hi.
Yeah, will do. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.